for elections 2024,
Yes.
May 2024, the ANC is working towards a resounding victory.
Right.
And that's where I want to leave it.
80 South Africans get murdered every day, which is more. That's 30,000 people a year, right? But yet the same Minister of Safety and Security has been in place this entire administration. So in other words, not thanks to the ANC, it's thanks to the taxpayer that has generated the taxes, that has given the money to a government do what they are appointed to do. Welcome to the State of the Nation, brought to you by Pace Car Rental. We mustn't forget about our sponsors. They keep us on air. If you will need to rent a car anywhere in the country, Pace Car Rental are your people. Use our special code Sona and get a discount on any car rental. And please support them, because they have supported us and allowed us to improve our production and bring a better quality of show to you. And this is starting to really bear fruit, because as we close in on the election, we have been trying very hard to get senior people from the bigger parties that are really going to be in it. And there is no bigger party in South Africa than the African National Congress. And I'm very happy to say that today we have the Treasurer General of the African National Congress, Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa, joining us. Dr. Ramokgopa, welcome to the State of the Nation.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Mike, yeah.
Mike. And thank you for inviting me to this program on the State of the Nation. Indeed, all of us are concerned, and we would really want our nation to move forward.
Yes.
But elections are necessary to renew the mandate, and also for South Africans to feel that this is our country.
Yeah, and of course, these elections are going to be, every election is important, but these ones are shaping up to be a little bit more important than some of those in the past. The polls indicate that the ANC, if they are going to get a majority, it will be a very slim one compared to the past, where you could rely on quite a big mandate. I'd imagine that will change certain things internally.
Well, where our canvassing on the ground, going door to door, and we're the only party that has the capacity to reach households to the extent that we have done. There's a lot of positive support. Many people were discouraged, and they are now standing up. If the rallies that we've had is anything to go by, people are there to still show that they appreciate the role the ANC has played in the freedom we all enjoy, and also over the past 30 years to take South Africa forward. For instance, on the issues of jobs, only 8 million South Africans had employment in 1994, and now it's 16 million. But we have also the beneficiaries of programs like NSFAS, which is part of our social security net, who are not accommodated in the economy. Just imagine if the economy could have accommodated them, the growth would have been multiple fold. So yes, there's a significant progress. The mantra of the opposition to say for the first time the ANC may get below 50, it reminds me of 1994 when there were narratives of sort of swart gevaar. There's danger, there's whatever else. And there's also the narrative that political parties, especially liberation movements, after 30 years, they tend to really decline. But we have worked hard. We have a renewal program, and we also have concrete and tangible progress that has happened in people's lives.
Yeah, well, let's pick up on a couple of those points. Number one, you make the point that more people are employed now than 1994. The population has also increased by 50%.
Indeed.
So, if you measure it like that, it doesn't seem so special. It's one thing to compare numbers to numbers, but we now have a population of about 65 million. I think when we went to the election in 1994, we had a population around 40 million. So it's a bit disingenuous to compare the hard number from then to now.
Well, that's why whenever I raise that, I also raise this population that has now increased of the working age population that is stuck
Yeah.
between post-education and participating in the economy. And that's going to be our priority area, to open up the economy for more of our young people in particular to participate and grow it. Yes.
Let's talk about the most, because I mean, that is the most important point, which is the economy.
Yes.
And this current administration, the sixth administration, has been diabolical when it comes to the economy. We've seen the economy flatline. We've recently had many of the big multinationals. You know, we had BHP Billiton wanting to buy Anglo-American as long as they got rid of their South African interest. We have Shell pulling out of what they call their downstream business, basically the petrol garages. We've even seen BBC cutting services to South Africa. So, you know, I mean, Rolex that have been here for nearly 100 years have closed their shops. The point is that internationally, we're not exactly getting a vote of confidence for the way that the economy has been managed.
Well, I think we want to acknowledge that the economy has not done as well as we had expected, having really been affected by some global problems and also the COVID pandemic and all that. I mean, but we can look back and say, why has the economy not performed? But we prefer to look forward and say, what can make our economy perform even better? That's why in our manifesto we have clearly put a plan. First and foremost, the beneficiation of the minerals. And South Africa has the largest deposits, for instance, of the platinum group of metals and manganese and a number of these metals that are necessary even for future clean fuel that we require. So that's why I'm saying the main focus will be breaking up. But even on this issue of social welfare, the 18 million South Africans that are on the social security net, that money also goes into the economy to stimulate the economy. What we need is exit strategy from the social network. So there's a great
because the
opportunity.
question is whether the social network, the grants, is an achievement or a failure. I mean, that really does depend on where you're sitting. I mean, to have to give people a pittance of 300, it's been raised to now, 370 odd rand a month, is a disgrace. It's an admission that under your governance, we couldn't create jobs for those people. They would have paid them many times that.
Well, Michael, I think you can look at it from the perspective of the bottle is half empty or it is half full. The important thing is that, and this is also one of the characteristics of our president, he really paints at people sleeping hungry, people not be able to have cash to go and look for jobs and all that. The biggest problem is the structural problems in the economy, and that is why our manifesto is focusing more on that.
Okay, so
if you look back, post-World War, there was no economy to talk about in Europe. And they focus on social security net. That's what they did, including NHI equivalent, the universal health coverage equivalent, was introduced when there was no economy to speak about. So with the 1,700 clinics built, 56 hospitals built, we have been able to reduce the child mortality rates from by half. We have reduced maternal mortality rates from the hundreds to 20. Yes, we have made progress, but we want to make much more greater progress, especially in the economy side of the things.
Right. Now, I do want to park the medical side of it because I know this is exactly your area of expertise, and we're going to come back to the medical thing. But I do want to pick up on something else. You said part of your plan is beneficiation of our minerals.
Exactly.
Right? Sounds like a wonderful idea. There's one thing that does go with beneficiation of any mineral, and that is power. Right?
Yes.
These things are power hungry. And for the last 15 years, South Africa has been power starved, despite the fact that half of the country is built on a mountain of coal. right? We've seen the hollowing out of SOEs, especially Eskom. And yes, we have the power running for the last 50 days leading to an election, which of course raises its own questions. But let's just say suddenly people learned how to run power stations. But how can you, with a straight face, say we're going to go for beneficiation of minerals when you can't provide power to keep the lights on?
Well, you're correct that the lights are on. I always say the first 10 years of our democracy, we focused mainly on creating a constitutional democracy where the rights of everyone is guaranteed, changing the laws and all that. The second decade, more or less, we focused on strengthening the social security net, and we left the private sector to invest in their own part of the task of building our nation. And during that period, maybe the early part of the decade that is passing, the third decade, I call it also a silly season. Some call it wasted years, where there was a conniving of both the public and the private sector to really steal from South Africans and to even collapse institutions that we built. If you remember, between the first 20 years, the access to electricity, even in rural areas that were dark, increased. We now have about 94% access. But the institutions that were destroyed by greed and corruption and state capture is not only limited to Eskom, it's also SARS. And SARS has turned around, and we are happy. And we want to thank them because they put South Africans' interests first. Now Eskom is turning around. We should be happy that we are now on a path of having to use that energy to put the lights on, but also to power our economy.
Now, I agree completely that there were definitely some players outside of government that were beneficiaries of state capture. But one of the first parts of the state that were hollowed out were the scorpions and the judicial system, which was done with the complete and utter support of the ANC, which rendered law enforcement toothless in going after state capture at that point before it caused any damage to the damage that it has caused to South Africa. That seems to be the last thing that the ANC wants to redress.
Well, we were the first to identify that problem.
Please, you can't say that. Please.
Wait, the institutions that have been put in place, including the public protector, are institutions that the majority in parliament was the ANC.
Right.
So we agreed that that institution should be in place. We agreed that a number of institutions like the Auditor General should be in place to make the democracy transparent and to ensure accountability. So if part of what has been established as the output of democracy with the ANC in majority, the Public Protector's Office is one of them.
Yeah, but the Public Protector's Office predates state capture.
The Public Protector's Office, yes, I'm saying for the time predating the state capture, the ANC was in the majority.
Yes.
To even establish that office.
Right.
Yes, I mean the ANC has always been in.
Because we had a public protector, she had to stop state capture.
She was one of South Africans that understood that our nation comes first, and we applaud her.
Yeah, but she had to do that without the support of the ANC. I mean, if we go back I mean, it's not good. Well, it can, and we can prove it because very simply, she came out with an Nkandla report.
I was part of the provincial leadership of the ANC, and we stood very firmly. And if you remember, there were also movements that came out from the ANC itself to say that is wrong. It doesn't matter whether those that are in the leadership or not, but those who are wrong are wrong. We raised those issues up We are happy that once we identified that there are leaders in the highest offices that are doing wrong things, we even put up what we call a renewal program. We instituted a step aside when people have to face these horrible charges and all that. And that's why some of them are leaving, because we have identified that they were wrong and that they had betrayed what the ANC stands for.
Okay,
and
so
what they did not stand for the ANC.
So they were wrong,
Yes.
and some of them have left, some of them have started new political parties, but
Yes.
some of them are in your cabinet.
Well, identify them.
Yes,
and
easy.
we
Zizi
have-
Kodwa,
we have
Gwedi Mantashe,
strengthened-
they're there in the state capture report.
We have strengthened you see, unfortunately, the reports that are there, those that are charged certainly have stepped aside. So we have left the NPA, which we have strengthened and with independence to go through those issues. So you can't say that we have not acted on the issues of state capture, even before the commission finished its state capture commission finished its report. We had asked the leader then to step aside to intervene. And since President Ramaphosa came in office, he had prioritized the issue of renewal, the issue of hollowing out and taking out corruption and corrupt people. And indeed, we have been able to say they were not doing that in the name of the ANC. It was their own interest, narrow interest.
We also had undertakings by the president that we would have no corruption with the COVID situation. But yet we had corruption, and nobody has seen the inside of a jail cell.
You know, Michael, you can't say there is no country in the world that does not have a risk of corruption. The 2008 global meltdown of the economy was because of corruption that emanated from America and also European professionals in the finance sector who were supposed to trust. So let us ensure that our measures of accountability, of justice, of criminal prosecution are effective, so that we can make sure that we identify preferably the risk, deal with it, and also those that dare steal from the common public purse, that they get the harshest sentences. And those are continuing. There are cases that the NPA has already taken to court.
Now, I'm asking and pushing quite hard on this issue because we're heading to the election.
I appreciate that. We want to send a very strong message of zero tolerance to corruption, and we are asking South Africans in their own individual capacities, in their corporates, those that are having responsible positions in government, to also say no to corruption and be zero tolerant of corruption. We need to renew the social moral, standing should improve.
And what about policing as a whole? You know, our government went to the International Court of Justice. At that point, Israel had killed 20,000 people, according to the statistics, in the Gaza Strip. And our government, got great plaudits for going to the International Court of Justice to avenge 20,000 innocent people that have been killed. So more than 80 South Africans get murdered every day, which is more. That's 30,000 people a year, right? But yet the same Minister of Safety and Security has been in place this entire administration. Surely somebody at the ANC who was as vigorous about taking Israel to the International Court of Justice should be that vigorous in saying, this minister is not doing his job. 30,000 South Africans, mostly innocent, are getting killed, right? We had one of the leading footballers getting killed in front of 10 witnesses. Yet we can't seem to police the country. Now, people live in fear in South Africa, right? We have a terrible number of gender-based violence, but yet Ndu Manana is still in the ANC, still probably working with you as one of your colleagues. A man who was caught on video beating up a woman. Now, can people believe that you care about justice and policing and safety and security? Can they vote for the ANC, believing that the ANC wants them to be safe with what I've just said?
What I think you share with me, hopefully, is that the levels of crime and criminality in our country need to be tackled much more head-on and much more severely. What also you should also acknowledge is that the police have been strengthened. We've also, the DNA processes have also been strengthened, more investment in reducing the turnaround times. And we are also not, we are concerned that our jails are also full, meaning that the police are doing whatever they can. The justice system in terms of the courts also is being revamped with more digital technology so that the turnaround time should be effective. What I would also like to stress is that you can't say more has not been done, a lot has not been done. We know that a lot has been done, but much more needs to be done. When we were young people, during the apartheid struggle, we were able to also move around our taverns in our communities, talking to tavern owners to make sure that we disarm the patrons. And we are really encouraged that the ANC Youth League is also taking up that focus on the communities, because crime has got also a component of social crime prevention that needs to happen. We need to conscientize, especially our young people, that crime does not pay.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Crime.
So it's yes the police, yes the courts, but also we also need to have social crime prevention. And if anything to go by, this province, led by Premier Panyaza Lesufi, they have begun to get the communities much more organized to be able to root out crime and criminality in their communities.
Because there's no doubt crime has got a massive social component, and that is that, generally when it's frowned upon by the community, there'll be less crime. But when your leaders are committing the crimes, right, that sort of gives a bit of a free pass to criminals to sort of say, well, if I can see people mentioned in the State Capture Commission as having misappropriated public funds and yet they get returned to Parliament, there's got to be a moral equivalency there. If a woman beater can stay employed by the ANC, then surely it's okay for me to hit my girlfriend. Do you know what I mean? Do you not see that contradiction?
We don't have any woman beater employed by the ANC. And those that are charged criminally, we have taken at the highest level a conference, a resolution which is in the Constitution, that they must step aside and face the charges. And some of them that face charges, like Mabuya Kulu, are then not found guilty. And only at the time, then we welcome them. But as long as they face charges and allegations of crime, of corruption, they must face these charges by themselves as individuals and not dragging the ANC into it, because the ANC also detests and frowns upon such actions.
Let's return to the economy, because obviously a lot of our ills come from an economy that is not working for everybody. You mentioned beneficiation. I do recall, I think it was in his first or second State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa talked about a mystery man, a guy by the name of Sipho Nkosi, who was there to cut red tape. And we haven't seen or heard from him since. Is it still on the ANC's agenda to cut red tape for business, or was that just a once-off promise that was made, never to be revisited? We've never heard from the man.
They are at the local government level. When I was mayor of Tshwane, at the provincial government level, and also at the national level, there has been measures to cut red tape. I'll give you an example. We have instituted the district development model, where not only government at the three spheres should be available for programs that invest in the economy, but also working with leaders in the private sector and in the organized civil society. So those joint programs should identify blockages and should be able to deal with red tape. The other issue is the one-stop offices that are there in attracting investments in provinces. I know about Gauteng because I've been a leader in Gauteng. There is a Gauteng Economic Development Agency, a one-stop shop for that. And one other thing that was done, for instance, was to do a province-wide EIA, so that when investors come, already you have identified areas which are economically or ecologically sensitive, and you can focus on those that are not ecologically environmentally sensitive. So there are measures. However, we acknowledge that more still needs to be done. Our message to South Africans is that a lot has been done together. We have a lot to celebrate about. South Africa is a much better country than we've inherited it. But yes, we still need to do a lot more, like many countries, even the advanced countries. When the environment changes, they need to adapt to the new challenges. So we should not cast away the need to celebrate when we face new challenges, but we must work towards working together and dealing with those challenges to get South Africa back to higher levels of growth.
I don't know how much the people that are going to go to bed hungry tonight are going to celebrate. Okay, some of these advances that you speak about. I mean, not too far from us is Rwanda, a country that had the worst possible start, the same time that the new South Africa got a start, where there was factional battles and nearly 1 million people got hacked to death. And now you can register a business and run your business. You can register and do everything in 2 hours. Now, in South Africa, you couldn't achieve that in 2 months if you had nothing else to do and all the resources at your disposal. Why is it so difficult for ANC governments, successive ANC governments, to get on top of these issues?
Well, I don't want to compare the difficulties that Rwanda went through to the ones that South Africa went through. Both are really human tragedies, and I don't want to be drawn in there as well. You are saying, is there any progress made in South Africa since the dawn of democracy? There is evidence that indeed, the Gau train, for instance, was not there as a first train. It is a product of this democracy. Just a few months ago, in a rural village where my father was born, called Botlokwa, a rural hospital that was built into a hospital in this democracy. A knee operation was done through artificial intelligence, a robotic knee operation. So there's a lot to celebrate. South Africans have a lot to celebrate, and yes, to acknowledge that we must move faster in certain interventions. And as I've indicated, the ANC is quite concerned about people going hungry. And that is why the interventions, for instance, of not only grants to those that don't have income, but to households, for instance, who have domestic workers who are supported by domestic workers, farm workers. We've also instituted a minimum wage so that the wage increases so that they can be able to support themselves and their families. So in terms of that, also from a medical perspective, under the leadership of the ANC, we've been able to eradicate severe malnutrition like kwashiorkor and marasmus. Yes, there's stunting that still needs to be defeated, but certainly when I was a young doctor, many children died of kwashiorkor and marasmus in my hands. But that, because of the social security system, that is no longer the case.
Now, don't you mentioned, minimum wage. Surely the minimum wage is 370 Rand a month, which is your government grant.
Not at all. Minimum, that is a special grant.
Okay.
The 370 is a special grant.
I understand that,
but
I'm talking about many millions of people that have got no access to a job.
But that small amount, it's there to help them. And Michael, maybe me and you frown at it, but there are those that many of our fellow South Africans who use that to get food, and some have used part of it even to start small businesses.
I'm not going to minimize.
And I am not saying that is a definitive solution. And I am one of those that acknowledge that it is little, and that we should use that rather as a base to look at introducing a more basic income grant. But we need to really get the economy working. And I want to call on a capital in our country. There's a lot of lazy capital to be invested in creating jobs, to be invested in beneficiating our minerals, to be invested in also agro-processing, the agriculture sector that is there. So there is an opportunity, and we are happy that many of our young people took up, which is part of social security system, the NSFAS. They now have qualifications, they have skills, and they are available. So we need to crack the economy to accommodate them.
Okay, so you mentioned a very important thing there, which I think is a great point. There's a lot of lazy capital around. There's a lot of capital in South Africa that's not being invested.
Yes,
right?
It may be invested, but not to benefit many.
Correct. It's not going into productive things like that. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think we must get the owners of that capital to answer that question.
They answer it every night on every business show.
The president called on social compacts, and we continue calling on social compacts, but that is why we're now looking at whatever resources that are available for the state to be used more productively, to really be state taking the lead as a developmental state to crack our economy, because our economy is not responsive, especially to the younger generation.
But surely at some point there's got to be a message in that there somewhere, that capital, which is the intention of capital, is to grow. Somehow capital isn't seeing the way clear to make a profit on that investment, right? Much like the social grant, you can't look at that as a good thing. That's obviously a bad thing. Basically, money is voting with its feet by saying, we won't invest here.
Well, capital boycotts a market for various reasons. And we are saying there is no reason not to invest in South Africa.
I can come up with many reasons.
And to expand the basis that will reduce the social vulnerabilities. There are countries that have really made, if you look at, for instance, the European Renaissance, it was funded.
Yes.
They didn't just get the money from themselves post-World War. It was funded. And we are also calling on those that have significantly benefited, unfairly so, from the resources of our continent and also of our country to reinvest.
Why is it unfairly so?
Unfairly so, because it was at the expense of the oppression and the exploitation of local communities. The investments were taken out of our country to enrich and fund the development of
much of
their
that
own
capital
countries.
that you speak about is in South Africa. It's with South Africans who are here, right? that have
Yes.
got capital, they're just not putting it to work.
Yeah, that
Right?
is why.
So I'm saying,
in
you know,
it may be that they do not buy into the nationhood building.
do you think so? Do you think that's the reason?
No,
Do you think they're trying
when
to...
capital can give money to a developer,
Right.
knowing that the developer will only be able to pay back so many years down the line when the project is matured. And we are saying, here we are, what we call a demographic dividend. Here are young people that can work our economy, invest in programs that can absorb them to grow the cake. You will benefit and they will benefit and our nation will be stronger.
Yes.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah, but you know, I know how that capital operates, and that capital operates in looking for a return on their investment.
Yes,
that
they
capital,
will get, because the cake will grow.
But right
They'll
now
get return.
Right now they're getting a return by just keeping it in the bank. They also don't need the headache of red tape and barriers put in their way. I'm just saying, at some point
During COVID,
if I'm selling a product, if I'm selling this cup and nobody wants to buy it, I have to start saying perhaps I'm not designing the best cup.
capital also raised concern about guarantees. Government gave guarantees even during COVID, but capital didn't assist. It's also the barriers to access capital, which marginalize the many. So even capital that is interested in nation building must look at how we can make resources available to unlock the economy.
Okay.
I think everybody agrees
So
that the economic potential of our country and of our continent is very huge.
Yeah.
And we must all work together. But indeed, we are concerned that capital does not adequately come on board. We don't want to come up with narratives that are not constructive. But one of the scientific scientific analysis is that more people are not having access to capital. And that is why we believe if the 80% of the population, which has been previously marginalized out of the economy, if they are empowered, they will work together with the 20% that have been empowered previously to even stimulate the economic growth. We have, over the past 30 years, there has been about 1,000 or so black industrialists that have been developed. And we want to double that in the next, in our manifesto. That's what we're going to do. Because if you have 20% carrying 80%, it's not sustainable. So more and more of black people must come into the economy, must be industrialists working alongside those that have been privileged in the past.
Right. Can we talk about the election? And what we've seen is, I've coined a term, so you can use it freely, but then acknowledge that I'm not. We've seen a lassification of our elections. That's basically when you go out and promise anything that's going to get you a vote, right? And we saw the passing of the NHI Act now by the president, right? Which goes against what he was saying earlier, where he said that there'd be more consultation before it was signed. There were many public-private partnerships around this, a lot of discussion around this, and even by his own admission subsequent to his signing, he has admitted that it's not ready, right? And now he goes on a speech saying he's going to kill health apartheid. His words, not mine. Is that the way the ANC views the NHI?
Well, fortunately, I was the NHI NEC coordinator at a national level as part and parcel of the consultations. Once the cabinet approved it and introduced it in Parliament, I've done a lot of study, and I can also reflect that around 1940, just immediately post-World War II, the Atlantic Charter, when it was developed, that the lives of every human being must now be invested in so that there's prosperity for everyone in every nation. The Africans were not included in that. And Dr. A.B. Kluma and many others, who was the President General of the ANC at the time, convened a conference and came up with African claims, where clearly, like many other developed nations that wanted to invest in the well-being of their people, agreed that there must not be any fees paid for healthcare. It must be free at point of delivery. And that's how the national health system in Europe has developed. Yes. So why should it be possible for British citizens to deserve to be treated without asking them how much they have in their pocket at a point of service? And South Africans, it be different. So why? Because we share the same humanity. For that matter, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have universal health coverage as a key component of how to make the world better for everyone. So why are those that really care for the lives of everyone not celebrating with South Africa for making this significant step ahead? Because
it doesn't look likely that you're going to get what's advertised on the box, because we have seen, and because you've worked in the government health sector, which is significant. That's about 85% of our healthcare is the state healthcare apparatus, which is in complete disarray, racked by corruption, racked by maladministration, right? We've seen terrible...
Those are your opinions.
No, they're the facts.
Having worked in the public health system almost all my life, I can enumerate progress, and progress not only in terms of running the system, also progress in terms of the quality of life of people. I've just told you that the maternal mortality rate, which is one of the indicators of how effective a health system is, has plummeted from over 170 women died of giving birth per 1,000 births to 20. We want it to get to 0. We have improved also, we've added 1,700 clinics and 56 hospitals. They are there. It's evidence. Yes, there are 7 pillars of any effective health system. Finance is one of them, and that's what we're dealing with. The finance, 8.5% of our GDP used in finance, a good point indeed, but half of it is now servicing 20%, and half of it is servicing 80%. Right. That is the health apartheid that do
you think it's useful for him to use those words?
Yes, it is, because it is.
Even though that more than half of our medical aid users are not white.
Well, it's still apartheid. It's still apartheid. Those that
even though it conjures up a racial connotation.
Our concept of apartheid is not black and white. Our concept of apartheid is humanity. And if you look at, for instance, when I was MEC in Gauteng, when the health system, especially the oncology services, had difficulties in KZN, many of those patients, black and white, came to Gauteng hospitals. And even now, the medical aids that are there, the benefits gets exhausted midway the year. And where do they go? They come to the public health system. So the reforms in the finance component of the health of our health system are critical, and they will enable quality care for everyone, black and white, employed, unemployed.
Yes.
And this is really what we have been striving towards since post-World War.
Yes.
And that's also a report of Dr. Klugman, who also had a commissioned by the government of the day then. he also agreed with us.
And
so you can't
wouldn't it
say
be
there hasn't
wonderful?
been consultation. It has been decades of consultation. And we should be celebrating that we've come to this
And
point.
wouldn't it be wonderful if every deployee was like Dr. Ramokgopa, right? But unfortunately, that's not the case. And looking down the line, right, one could be excused for reaching the conclusion, much like we saw with the PPE scandal, that there's going to be a lot of money sloshing around, and that money is going to find a home, and it may not be the right home. And we're going to get promises that something's going to be done about it, but would you bet on it? And then, of course, there's the second part of this, and you would be in a far better position than I to comment. And that is that surely the skill that is most transferable in the world is that of a medical professional, right? And if I'm a young doctor right now and I have to look 10 years hence at a system that's run by an ANC government that's got full control over medicine in South Africa, healthcare in South Africa, right, that perhaps I might as well start answering some of those emails I'm getting from first world health services. And that cuts across racial lines, right? And do we not run the risk of losing all of our young medical professionals to first world countries?
There shouldn't be a risk at all, because the whole world is moving towards universal health coverage.
Yes, but some are run better than others, is what I'm saying.
Well, the health system in South Africa was run so well that the World Health Organization commended us for putting together public and private sector to deal effectively with COVID together. So I think, and there is even the
and
life...
yet it still didn't escape the clutches of
life
people that wanted to steal money. It was
well,
the Minister of Health, for God's
where
sake.
in the world do you not have...
Well, you don't expect the Minister of Health to steal the money.
Where
No, really.
in the world do you have... Well, for instance, in China, they identify and they execute summarily. In America, they also identify. So there's nowhere in the world where you would not have individuals who do wrong things. But you can't take the wrongdoing of individuals and then paint a political party that has served South Africans to the point that the ANC has served South Africa. The liberation movement, and we said our liberation struggle is for everyone in the Freedom Charter, black and white, rural and urban. And secondly, the progress we've made, the rural areas have got piped water, even in their yards, some of them. We know we haven't as yet got to everybody having water in the yard. We have a 94% coverage of electricity. We are even turning around institutions that were decayed by those that were not effective. So you can't just say these tangibles must present a risk that we will not manage. It's the whole concept of a swart gevaar, which really is a concern. And we are worried why there should be a pact to weaken the ANC. I was a mayor in Tshwane. My township was not tarred at all. It's the first township to be fully tarred. We had a master plan of tarring the township, and it was one of the cleanest. But now, under the government of the DA for the past few years, I've had to be called to clean up the township. It was stinking, smelling, and all that. So please be focused on the progress that have been done and not denting the brand ANC, because the brand ANC for many of us represent liberation, represent humanity, represents the human rights, my human dignity, my human rights, my freedom. I wouldn't have even been allowed to be here after 6. I would have been in detention.
And nobody is going to take that away from the ANC, and nobody should be able to take that away from the ANC. However, we don't live in the past, we live in the future. There's an election coming up, right? And the polls are saying that the ANC, in all likelihood, will slip below a majority level.
Yeah, because of all this negative...
people make up their own minds.
You don't have anything in your research since I was here. that says, oh, the ANC has made progress here. How is it going to take it to the next level? No, you have
Dr.
all the
Ramokgopa.
negativity.
No, because it's a very simple.
That is your mandate.
No, it's not my mandate at all.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what my mandate is.
Yeah.
Is that me as well as other South Africans have paid taxes for these services. So in other words, you've done those points of progress that you point out, and there are, were bought and paid for. In fact, we paid for a lot more progress than what we've seen. So in other words, not thanks to the ANC, it's thanks to the taxpayer that has generated the taxes, that has given the money to a government to then do what they are appointed to do. So it's not a thank you. Much like, when you go and you buy a hamburger from McDonald's, you expect a hamburger, right? You don't expect half a hamburger and say, well, look, I gave you half a hamburger. No, you've bought the whole hamburger. And I'm saying in South Africa, the taxpayers, we pay 17% VAT, we pay 50% of our fuel levy goes to the state. We pay...
there you go again. You see? There you go again. Your mandate.
I don't have a mandate.
Okay. Your questioning.
Yes.
Let me say your questioning and your outlook is things are too bad.
No, I didn't say that at all. I'm saying that in
Yes.
the country we pay for certain services,
Yeah.
right? And the next government, whoever that would be,
Education. South Africa has been identified as number one in the world for having made progress in investing in education. Is that not what
have they achieved outcomes?
As an outcome?
Has our education achieved the outcomes?
What do you mean it hasn't achieved?
Well, what
outcomes?
about people, 10-year-olds, not being able to read for meaning?
I've adopted my primary school, and many of those children, in their own language, they are eloquent. But when you subject them to English, then they don't perform that well. So those are some of the issues that we need to look at. But in our manifesto, we even say we want to extend early childhood development because unfortunately the world of the economy is still in English. So we need to invest much more in early childhood development so that by 10 years, the children, in terms of reading English, are on par with those that are born in English families. And they don't mix English with Sesotho.
Right.
You see?
Yeah.
So we must be objective in our analysis and our criticisms and look at what concrete deliverables have been, whilst acknowledging that there are areas of improvement. I think we are the first.
Yes.
We always identify areas of improvement, and then that's why our manifesto is responding to this.
Okay, so just if we can just end off by focusing on the election.
Yes.
And the aftermath of the election, because that is going to be very important. The election, the ANC machinery kicked in just when it looked like it may be too late, swooped in, brought out some of the veterans, a lot of excitement. A lot of your opponents have been shooting themselves in the foot. And the ANC has definitely gone up in the polls. But in most polls, it's still looking like the ANC might struggle to get a majority. Right? I'm just saying. I'm not saying this is not my mandate.
Those are your words.
Those are my words. Is the ANC ready to work with other parties in the, if it should happen that they do not get an outright majority?
For elections 2024,
yes,
May 2024, the ANC is working towards a resounding victory.
Right.
And that's where I want to leave it.
Okay, so if the ANC doesn't get a resounding victory, who knows is really where we're leaving it. Because, if all the polls are right and the ANC come up short, they're going to have to do something.
You've just said yourself that the polls are showing that the ANC is improving.
Well,
And certainly we've worked hard to that. We have shared with our people without arrogance, just with humility to say, these are the concrete facts. You may be hearing this or that, the concrete facts are these. And our people acknowledge and they have committed to ourselves that they will go out in their numbers and vote for the ANC to renew its mandate. And we have committed that we will serve South Africans with diligence, with also excellence, and ensure that we take South Africa to the next level.
Well, Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa, it has to be acknowledged that you are here, you're answering the tough questions. You have been a great guest. Thank you very much. And I know that I've pushed hard on some of the issues, but I think it's important because these are the questions that people want answered. Thank you so much for coming through. I know you're working very hard for the elections. To everybody that watched this, maybe the ANC is worth another chance. Maybe the last 30 years was just a dress rehearsal for some power-packed delivery over the next 5 years by our 7th administration, which, according to Dr. Ramokgopa, is going to be formed solely by the ANC President Ramaphosa. We are going to beneficiate minerals. We are going to get healthcare for all. And South Africa will, the murder rate will decline, everything will be great, and they'll be responsive to the public. If that has convinced you, perhaps the ANC is worth another vote. To everybody that's watched this on the State of the Nation, we may be worth a vote. Go and subscribe and like the State of the Nation and support Case Car Rental. Thank you so much for joining us.